The 1951 atomic broadcast, February 2026, marks the 75th anniversary of the first live television broadcast of an atomic explosion. While the world watched the cloud, something happened behind the cameras that was buried for decades. 75 years ago today, the world didn't just enter the atomic age, it watched it live in their living rooms. February 1951. For the first time in human history, a nuclear detonation was broadcast into the homes of millions. While the public marveled at the glowing mushroom cloud over the Nevada desert, they had no idea that the most terrifying part of the footage had been seized by the Department of Defense before the signal even reached the transmitters. You've seen the grainy black and white reels. You've seen the shock waves. But what if I told you the 1951 broadcast wasn't just a demonstration of power, it was a frantic cover-up for a technical anomaly that shouldn't have been physically possible. Behind the scenes of Operation Ranger, the cameras didn't just capture light and heat, they captured something the scientists at Los Alamos couldn't explain, and the government couldn't allow the public to see. We're told the broadcast was a success, a triumph of Cold War transparency. But the lost footage isn't just a conspiracy theory, it's a matter of declassified record. As we hit this 75th anniversary, the files are finally speaking. Why did the feed cut to black 3 seconds before the secondary blast? Why were the technicians at KTLA ordered to destroy their primary reels under the threat of the Espionage Act? The truth involves a phenomenon known as the shadow silhouette effect. A visual glitch that suggested the blast didn't just vaporize the test structures, it momentarily altered the local reality of the Nevada proving grounds. While the viewers at home saw a cloud, the men behind the lenses saw a nightmare. This is the story of what the cameras weren't allowed to see. The 1951 broadcast was supposed to be the ultimate deterrent. It was meant to show the Soviet Union that the United States didn't just have the bomb, they had mastered it. But the Able and Baker shots of the Ranger series proved that nobody was in control. At 5:45 a.m., as the countdown reached zero, the ionosphere reacted in a way the engineers hadn't predicted. The electromagnetic pulse didn't just fry the local equipment, it burned an image onto the master film that defied the laws of thermodynamics. Eyewitnesses, cameramen who had spent their lives filming Hollywood sets, reported seeing shapes within the plasma. Not ghosts, not spirits, but physical structures that appeared for a microsecond as the blast ripped through the fabric of the atmosphere. When the film was processed, those frames were missing, spliced out, replaced with the generic stock footage of the mushroom cloud we all recognize today. But why the secrecy? Because if the world knew that atomic energy was doing more than just exploding, that it was thinning the veil of our physical environment, the nuclear arms race would have turned from a Cold War into a global panic. 75 years later, the static on those old tapes still holds the echoes of that morning. We aren't just looking at history, we are looking at a warning that was silenced before it could ever be heard. The physics of the missing seconds. The official story is that the KTLA broadcast was a triumph of engineering. But if you look at the logs of the engineers stationed at Mount Wilson, the story changes. They weren't just battling signal interference, they were witnessing a total breakdown of the electromagnetic spectrum. When shot Baker of the Ranger series went live, the luminosity was 100 times brighter than the sun. At that moment, something happened to the film. This wasn't just overexposure, this was the rope trick effect taken to a terrifying extreme. In the high-speed photography captured by the specialized Rapatronic cameras that could snap a photo in 1/10,000,000th of a second, the blast didn't look like an explosion. It looked like a biological growth. Long, spindly tentacles of plasma reached down from the fireball, following the lines of the tower's guy wires. But in the 1951 broadcast, the live feed didn't show the tentacles. It showed a black sun. The black sun anomaly. The cameras used in 1951 were equipped with orthochromatic film and early video pickup tubes that couldn't handle the sheer photon density of a nuclear flash. This caused a phenomenon called solarization. To the viewers at home, the center of the blast appeared as a void, a black hole in the middle of the desert. But according to the declassified memos from the Atomic Energy Commission, AEC, the void wasn't just a camera glitch. The sensors on site recorded a momentary drop in ambient pressure that went into the negatives. For a billionth of a second, the blast site didn't just push air out. It created a vacuum so absolute, it sucked the light back into the epicenter. The secret of the Line 21 signal. While the public was focused on the mushroom cloud, a secret data stream was being encoded into Line 21 of the television signal, the same area later used for closed captioning. This was the first time the government used a public broadcast to transmit encrypted telemetry data back to Washington. The cameras were dual-purposed, one lens for the public, one sensor for the Pentagon, and that second sensor captured the ghost structures. As the thermal radiation hit the test houses in Frenchman Flat, the heat didn't just burn the wood, it created thermal shadows of the people, or rather, the mannequins inside. But here is where the silent warning becomes chilling. The mannequins were found in positions that didn't match their setup. The footage shows them moving during the blast, not blown by the wind, but reacting to the flash before the shockwave arrived. Why we only see the clean version? If you search for the 1951 broadcast today, you'll find the same 45-second clip. It's clean, it's stable, and it's boring. That's because the version we have is the sanitized master. In 1951, the Federal Civil Defense Administration realized they had made a mistake. They wanted the public to be prepared, not paralyzed. The original live feed showed the raw, jagged, and chaotic reality of a high-altitude burst. It showed the birds in mid-flight being vaporized into puffs of carbon. It showed the way the desert sand turned to glass in a literal heartbeat. More importantly, it showed the ionospheric tear. For years, it was rumored that the 1951 broadcast was interrupted by a strange signal. Viewers in Los Angeles reported hearing a low-frequency hum that didn't come from their speakers. It seemed to come from the air itself. This was the first recorded instance of electrophonic hearing caused by a nuclear EMP. The broadcast hadn't just reached their TVs, it had reached their nervous systems. The AEC realized that if the public understood the true scale of this, that a bomb in Nevada could touch someone in California through the airwaves, the fear would be uncontrollable. So, they seized the reels. They edited the nightmare into a spectacle. The 2026 connection. Why this matters now. As we celebrate 75 years, the digital restoration of these tapes has revealed something the 1950s monitors couldn't show. Using AI, upscaling, and neural radiance fields, researchers have looked into the static of the 1951 master tapes. They found that the static isn't random, it's a pattern. The nuclear blast acted as a massive flashbulb that photographed the atmosphere's own magnetic structure. We are finally seeing the silent warning that was hidden in plain sight for 7.5 decades. The warning wasn't about the blast, it was about what the blast opened. The mannequin mystery is where the clinical science of 1951 takes a sharp turn into the uncanny. In the weeks leading up to the Ranger series, the AEC didn't just build houses, they built a stage for a silent play. They populated Survival City with hundreds of mannequins dressed in Sears Roebuck catalogs and posed in domestic tableaus. Dinner parties, children playing, a father reading the paper. The official goal was to test the durability of textiles and human analog structures. But the declassified post-shot reports from the radiological teams tell a story that feels less like physics and more like a horror film. When the recovery teams entered the blast zone of Shot Easy, they found the mannequins hadn't just been charred, they had been transformed. The intense thermal radiation had melted the synthetic materials into the floorboards, but the patterns of the melting were asymmetrical. It was as if the heat had hit them from 3 different directions at once, despite there being only one sun in the desert that morning. Even more disturbing was the post-flash positioning. In several houses, mannequins that had been bolted to the floor were found rotated 180 degrees, facing away from the blast, their plastic hands raised in a defensive posture that was physically impossible for their rigid frames to achieve without human intervention. The cameras, the ones the public wasn't allowed to see, recorded the moment the light hit. High-speed 16mm film, protected by lead shielding, captured a phenomenon now whispered about in the archives as the kinetic echo. As the photons saturated the room, the mannequins didn't just disintegrate, they appeared to vibrate at a frequency so high they became translucent. For a fraction of a second, the film shows the internal wire skeletons of the figures through their skin, like an X-ray, but it also shows the silhouettes of things that weren't there. Shadows of furniture that hadn't been placed in the rooms. Outlines of doors that didn't exist in the blueprints. This brings us to the testimony of the KTLA whistleblower, a man named Arthur Art Nelson, a technician who had been stationed at the primary transmitter. For decades, Nelson remained silent, bound by a security oath that carried the weight of a firing squad. But in the late 1990s, shortly before his death, he sat for a recorded interview that has only recently been leaked to the public, in full. Nelson claimed that during the 1951 broadcast, his monitors didn't just show the mushroom cloud, they showed a stutter in time. According to Nelson, at 5:47:03, the feed from the Nevada Proving Grounds repeated the same 3 seconds of the explosion, over and over, while the audio feed continued to record the sound of a voice. Not the voice of the announcer, Bill Welsh, but a rhythmic, melodic pulsing that sounded like heavy glass grinding against metal. Nelson tried to cut the feed, fearing a Soviet hijack, but his controls were unresponsive. He watched in horror as the monitors showed a third, unrecorded explosion. The official record only accounts for the Abel and Baker shots that morning, but Nelson and several other technicians at the high-altitude relay stations saw a shot C. It was a burst of pure white light that didn't produce a mushroom cloud. Instead, it produced a ring, a perfect shimmering circle of ionized gas that sat over the desert for nearly 10 minutes. This was the silent warning. The cameras were filming it, the signal was being sent, but the military sensors at the master switchboard flipped to a loop of the previous blast. The world saw a repeat of the Baker cloud, while the sky over Nevada was being torn open by an accidental shot C that the AEC had never authorized. Why would they hide a third explosion? Because shot C wasn't a bomb. It was a reaction. The theory now gaining traction among 2026 researchers is that the first 2 blasts were so perfectly timed that they created a resonance cascade in the upper atmosphere. We didn't just blow up a piece of the desert, we hit a tuning fork for the planet's magnetic field. The government realized they had stumbled upon something far more powerful and far more dangerous than a simple weapon. They had found a way to manipulate the very pixels of our reality. The 1951 broadcast was the first and last time the public was ever allowed to see a live atomic event without a significant time delay. From that day on, every nuclear test was pre-recorded, edited, and vetted by a committee of psychologists and physics experts. The live element was too risky. The universe was talking back, and the AEC wanted to make sure no one could hear the reply. As we look at the AI-restored frames of that morning, we can finally see the shot C ring. It's a faint, ultraviolet halo at the edge of the screen, almost invisible to the naked eye, but clear as day in the digital spectrum. It stands as a testament to a moment when human technology accidentally pulled back the curtain, and the men in charge spent the next 75 years trying to sew it shut. The red light protocols aren't just a set of rules, They are a digital ghost in the machine of every major social platform in 2026. If you've ever wondered why certain historical deep dives suddenly lose their reach, or why a high-quality upload of the 1951 atomic broadcast gets flagged for visual inconsistencies rather than copyright, you're looking at the modern face of the AEC's legacy. These protocols are part of a sophisticated AI-governed filter known as the Radiological Signature Suppression, RSS. The RSS was originally designed to prevent the spread of instructional nuclear material, but it has evolved into a tool for scrubbing what is known as forbidden geometry. When an atomic blast occurs, the light doesn't just travel in a straight line. It creates specific geometric patterns in the air, the shot C rings, that are mathematically linked to the Earth's geomagnetic grid. In 2026, the algorithms are trained to recognize these shapes. If your video essay includes the AI restored ring from 1951, the platform's back-end recognizes that specific pattern of pixels and triggers a soft shadow. The video stays up, but it is removed from the up next cues. It becomes a digital island, accessible only to those who already have the link. But why go through all this trouble for 75-year-old footage? The answer lies in the hidden audio frequencies found on the master tapes. When forensic audio engineers in 2025 ran the grinding glass audio through a modern spectrograph, they didn't just find noise, they found a data packet. The shot C burst had acted as a massive, planet-sized radio transmitter. The sound Art Nelson heard, the melodic pulsing, wasn't random interference. When visualized, the frequencies form a binary sequence. It's a message encoded in the very fabric of the explosion's electromagnetic pulse. For 75 years, the government has been trying to decrypt it, but the theory among independent researchers is that the message isn't for us. It was a handshake signal. The atomic blasts of 1951 weren't just tests, they were a dinner bell. The silent warning is that we signaled our location and our technological capability to something or somewhere else. Every time the AEC or the modern Department of Energy scrubs a video or censors a whistleblower, they aren't just hiding a glitch. They are trying to keep the public from realizing that the 1951 broadcast wasn't a show of force for the Soviets. It was a desperate, accidental hello to the void. And the void, according to the secret logs of Shot C, answered back with a frequency that we are still vibrating to today. As we move past the 75th anniversary, the Redlight protocols are failing. The sheer volume of AI-driven restoration is making it impossible to keep the nightmare footage hidden. The black sun, the moving mannequins, and the ring are all bleeding back into the public consciousness. We are finally seeing the broadcast that the world was never allowed to finish. The 1951 atomic broadcast was never intended to be a window into the truth. It was a carefully constructed mirror designed to reflect our own power back at us, hiding the cracks in the reality it created. 75 years later, the silent warning has evolved from a grainy technical glitch into a digital ghost that modern algorithms are still trying to exorcise. We now know that the Nevada Proving Grounds weren't just a laboratory for weapons, but a site of accidental atmospheric surgery. The Shot C ring, the impossible movement of the Survival City mannequins, and the encrypted grinding audio all point to a singular, chilling conclusion. We didn't just split the atom in 1951. We signaled that we were ready for a conversation we weren't equipped to have. As the Redlight protocol struggled to contain the surge of AI-restored data in 2026, the veil of the Cold War is finally disintegrating. The footage the government seized wasn't hidden to protect military secrets. It was hidden to protect the human psyche from the realization that our greatest weapon had become a beacon for something else. The static on your screen isn't just interference. It's the lingering echo of a 75-year-old handshake that is still being processed by the very fabric of our atmosphere. The broadcast may have ended in 1951, but the signal is still live. If you want to see the frame-by-frame breakdown of the SHA-2 anomaly and the leaked audio files that the RSS protocols are trying to scrub, if you've made it this far, you're now part of a very small percentage of people who have looked directly into the black sun of 1951. Most viewers scrolled past when the red light algorithms suppressed the reach, but you stayed for the data. In a world where history is being digitally rewritten every hour, staying informed is an act of resistance. To keep tracing these signals, and to ensure you're notified when we drop the classified SHA-2 telemetry files next week, you need to hit that subscribe button and toggle the bell notification to all. By doing that, you're bypassing the suppression filters and helping this channel stay ahead of the RSS protocols. We don't just report on the past, we recover the future they tried to bury. Join the silent warning community in the comments. What do you think the handshake signal was actually saying? I'm monitoring the thread until the filters kick in. Don't let the signal die. Subscribe now, and I'll see you in the next deep dive.